Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 6, Chapter 4, Text 27. Bhagavatam, translated, presented with commentaries by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada, Founder Acharya of the International Society for Krishna Consciousness. The text is available at the website for free download, krishnapath.org. And this is the first edition, copyright 1975, Srimad Bhagavatam. And this is text 27 and 28 together. We're hearing the prayers of Prajapati Daksha. He has been assigned the service of populating the universe. Prajapati, someone who provides the praja, the citizens, the living entities. And up to this point, he's been meditating, and within his mind, it's become clear to him the different forms that will be provided. He will be populating the universe, bringing them into the universe, conceiving of them. But he's not happy about the way it's going. It's not going quite right. So he's approaching the Supreme Personality of Godhead, not for anything material, but to be able to do his service. He's performing austerities, and he's offering what's called the Hamsaguya prayers. He didn't make them up. They're not his prayers. They are recorded in the Vedas, but he's reciting them and offering that recitation to the Lord for the Lord's glorification. And the Supreme Personality of Godhead is pleased by this offering. He's chanting. It's devotional service, chanting. So he's continuing with these prayers. And this is being narrated, being explained by Sukadeva Goswami to Maharaj Parikshit. Is telling him this history of Daksha. So, 27. Just as great learned Brahmins who are expert in performing ritualistic ceremonies and sacrifices can extract the fire dormant within wooden fuel by chanting the 15 Samadhini mantras, thus proving the efficacy of the Vedic mantras, so those who are actually advanced in consciousness, in other words, those who are Krishna conscious, can find the Supersoul, who by his own spiritual potency is situated within the heart. Nice example there, nice illustration, comparing the fire, which is stored in wood. The fire is actually the energy of the sun. The trees are growing in the sunshine, and they're storing up this energy of the sun. And when they're ignited, that energy comes out in the form of fire. So the learned Brahmins are expert in performing ritualistic ceremonies and sacrifices. When they start their sacrificial fire, they don't start it with matches. They start it with mantras. They're able to release that stored up energy of the sun within the fire, within the wood, through mantras, and then that proves the potency of their chanting for the rest of the sacrifice. So that, being able to do that, is being compared to those who are Krishna conscious. They're able to find the Supersoul, who is in the heart of all living entities. And you can see the Sankirtan Yagna. What's recommended for this age isn't a fire sacrifice started by mantras. What's recommended for this age is Sankirtan sacrifice. And that mantra brings forth the Supreme Personality of Godhead within the heart. Very nice. The heart is covered by the 3 modes of material nature and the 9 material elements, which are material nature, total material energy, the ego, the mind, and the 5 objects of sense gratification. And also by the 5 material elements and the 10 senses. These 27 elements constitute the external energy of the Lord. Great yogis meditate upon the Lord, who is situated as the Supersoul, Paramatma, within the core of the heart. May that Supersoul be pleased with me. The Supersoul is realized when one is eager for liberation from the unlimited varieties of material life. One actually attains such liberation when he engages in the transcendental loving service of the Lord and realizes the Lord because of his attitude of service. So the great liberated souls, or the great personalities and yogis, meditate upon the Lord within the heart. This is the Paramatma feature of the Supreme Lord. And Daksha is saying, may that Supersoul be pleased with me. And that the Supersoul is realized when one is eager for liberation from the unlimited varieties of material nature. Unlimited varieties of material nature. The tendency is, I wasn't happy this way, let me try that way. I'm sure there's a situation here that I can use. This didn't work, but certainly that will work. This is an improvement over that. And we see that with scientific theories also. The unlimited varieties of theory is popular and in vogue for some time, and then another theory comes and takes its place. In all the different sciences, it's all theory. There's no fact proven anywhere. What they accept as fact, materialist, only remains fact for a little while, and then it's superseded by a superior understanding. And then that is superseded, and it goes on continually. Because the ultimate fact, the ultimate truth, isn't realized by material endeavors. And there's unlimited material variety. So the yogis, they are eager to become liberated from being attracted to the unlimited varieties of material life. One actually attains such liberation when he engages in the transcendental loving service of the Lord. So this is a 2-part, being presented in 2 parts here. The yogis, they meditate on the Supersoul. And then one is eager for liberation from material life. The Supersoul is realized. Okay, that's good. They achieved their goal. They realized the Supersoul. But then this goes on, this is the verse, goes on. It says one actually attains liberation when he engages in transcendental loving service of the Lord and realizes the Lord because of his attitude of service. So just realizing Paramatma is on the way to perfection. It's not actually the perfection. Because he's the one actually realizes, one actually attains real liberation when he engages in the transcendental loving service of the Lord and realizes the Lord because of his attitude of service. The Lord may be addressed by various spiritual names which are inconceivable to the material senses. Now, I was thinking about this yesterday, that how the Lord, his names are absolute. And the material senses, when they try to approach the absolute materially, they can't do it. Like, for instance, the names in the material world, they're not actually what they designate. The name and the actual thing that's being described, they're descriptors. The name that's being described of the thing is different from the name, from its name. Like water. You can say water, 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 water. All you have is that sound vibration, water. You don't actually have any water. The name is different from what it's designating. But spiritually, the name is non-different because everything is absolute in the spiritual world. So Krishna is there in his name, Krishna. So the material senses, they cannot approach the spiritual plane. So it's not possible to understand materially the absolute nature of the Lord's names. His names come from his pastimes and his activities, his qualities, his form, his paraphernalia even. His name, say one name would be Nanda Sutta, son of Nanda Maharaj. So that name for Krishna comes from his spiritual transcendental pastime with that soul, Nanda, who relates to Krishna eternally, that Krishna is his son. Keshi Sudana, who killed the Keshi demon. So Krishna, that's an activity of Krishna's. The name Krishna itself refers to blackish, or Mukunda, giver of liberation. Keshava, I believe Keshava refers to his hair, his long black hair. So materially, the material senses cannot understand these names of the Lord because they're coming from the spiritual platform. They do become spiritualized when they come in contact with them, because the Lord's potency is very, very, very powerful, and simply by hearing the Lord's name is a type of devotional service. So it never goes in vain. But the way the Lord is understood is through realization and devotional service. The Lord reveals himself through devotional service. Cannot be understood simply by mental speculation. They're not material names. The Lord may be addressed by various spiritual names which are inconceivable to the material senses. Because the material senses, they're connected to the mind, and the mind is prone to speculate, and it just cannot understand like that. Because the material mind is subject to the three modes of material nature, whereas the transcendental names of the Lord are not subject to the three modes of material nature. They're beyond, just as the Lord himself and his names, everything connected to the Lord, is not under the jurisdiction of the three modes of material nature, whereas the material mind is. when will that Supreme Personality of Godhead be pleased with me? Prabhupada's commentary. In his commentary to this verse, Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur uses the word durvigneyam, which means very difficult to realize. The pure stage of existence is described in Bhagavad Gita 7:28, wherein Krishna says, Yesham tvanta gata papam jnanam punya karmanam te dvandva mohanurmukta bhajante mam dridhavrata. Translation: persons who have acted piously in previous lives and in this life, whose sinful actions are completely eradicated, who are freed from the duality of delusion, engage themselves in my service with determination. The point being made here is that Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur indicates that the word durvigneyam means very difficult to realize. Prabhupada has several quotes now that are showing how, yes, this is the case. Pure devotional service Krishna is very difficult to realize. If this first verse is describing persons who have acted piously in previous lives and in this life, whose sinful reactions are completely eradicated, freed from the duality of delusion. They've gone through all of that, purification. What do? Krishna says, they engage themselves in my service with determination. So those people, they've had to travel a very difficult path. Pious activities in previous lives as well as this life, sinful actions, all completely eradicated, freed from delusion. And what do? They engage themselves in Krishna's service. That's the conclusion of it all. After going through all of that, then they reach the conclusion, engage in serving Krishna. Oh, yes. Another verse Prabhupada quotes. Elsewhere in Bhagavad Gita 9:14, the Lord says, Satatam kirtayanto mam yatantascha dvidhavrata namas yantascha mam bhaktya nityam yukta upasyate. Translation: always chanting my glories, endeavoring with great determination, bowing down before me, these great souls perpetually worship me with devotion. End translation. So this is what these souls who are engaging in devotional service are doing. They're always chanting Krishna's glories, endeavoring with great determination, bowing down, worshipping Krishna with devotion. Prabhupada continues, one can understand the Supreme Personality of Godhead after transcending all material impediments. So, it's not taking this cheaply. It's not some cheap, silly thing. Oh, Krishna, he blew and he sings and he plays the flute and he dances with girls. And it's not like that. No. He says, after transcending all material impediments, one can understand Supreme Personality of Godhead. Therefore, Prabhupada continues, therefore Lord Krishna also says in the Gita 7:3, Manushyanam sahasreshu kaschid yatati siddhaye yatatam api siddhanam kaschin mam veti tatvata. Translation: out of many thousands among men, one may endeavor for perfection, and of those who have achieved perfection, hardly one knows me in truth. End translation. It's how rare understanding Krishna, actually realizing Krishna is. Here Prabhupada says, he quotes this verse, many thousands among men who endeavor for perfection. And of those who have actually achieved perfection, it's not that those thousands, it's out of those thousands, many thousands among men who even try, and of those who actually achieve perfection, liberation, not this body, hardly one knows me in truth, the personality of Godhead. Prabhupada continues, to understand the Supreme Personality of Godhead, one must undergo severe penances and austerities. But since the path of devotional service is perfect, by following this process, one can very easily come to the spiritual platform and understand the Lord. So by performing all the austerities and the penances and the meditations and all of this and that to try and reach Krishna, they finally reach Krishna. What is the conclusion? Oh, devotional service. Chanting and hearing about the Lord constantly, endeavoring with great determination. Oh. So here, in Lord Chaitanya's Sankirtan movement, it's not necessary to go through all of that. Just take to devotional service right away. This is the Sankirtan. What does that mean? Glorification of Krishna. Especially together. So, this is the Sankirtan movement. And that's why it supersedes all the other processes, because it's actually the conclusion being presented, is being given right away. No prerequisites required. Just take to devotional service right away. It's Kali Yuga. There's not enough ghee and gold and precious metals and silks and Brahmins to perform sacrifices. They can't light fires with mantras. So what good is their chanting of the rest of the sacrifices? Costly temples and deity worship is very, very difficult. Don't try to do that. I'm sitting and meditating like in Satya Yuga for 50,000 years. If people live past 60, they're lucky. 70, 80. And where is there even a quiet place to sit and meditate? So just take right away. This is the conclusion of all of that anyway. Performing all of those things, this is the conclusion, to chant and glorify the Lord. That's the conclusion. That's why it's all there, the sacrifices, the temple worship, the meditation. Because what's the conclusion? Oh, glorify the Lord. Oh, I get it. So Lord Chaitanya's mercy is so magnanimous and merciful. Just take it right away. Don't worry about all those other things, because in Kali Yuga, you can't do it anyway. Can't even get the Varnashram up and running properly. It's such a fallen age. And it's just begun. So this is the glories of the Sankirtan movement. Just like we're hearing in these verses. Hare Krishna. So, to understand Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, says Prabhupada's commentary, one must undergo severe penances and austerities. But, since the path of devotional service is perfect, by following this process, one can very easily come to the spiritual platform and understand the Lord. This too is confirmed in Bhagavad Gita 1855, wherein Krishna says, Bhakti mama bijanati yavanyaschasmi tatpataha tato mam tatvato yatva vishate tadanantaram. Translation. One can understand the Supreme Personality of Godhead as He is only by devotional service. And when one is in full consciousness of the Supreme Lord, by such devotion, he can enter into the kingdom of God. End translation. Thus, although the subject matter is dirvigneham, extremely difficult to understand, it becomes easy if one follows the prescribed method. Coming in touch with the Supreme Personality of Godhead is possible through pure devotional service, which begins with Shravanam Kirtanam Vishnu. So where is the Shravanam Kirtanam Vishnu coming from? It's coming from the devotees of the Lord who are realized. Coming in touch with the Supreme Personality of Godhead is possible through pure devotional service. So how do we get pure devotional service? And Prabhupada explains through Shravanam Kirtanam Vishnu, hearing and chanting about the Lord. So hearing. So where are we hearing from? We're hearing from those that are already situated in love of God. It's by hearing from them this hearing process is how the bhakti lata is transferred, by hearing from the pure devotee. Receive the seed of devotional service within the heart begins to sprout. Why? Because they're connected to Krishna through devotional service. In this regard, Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur quotes a verse from Srimad Bhagavatam 285. Pravista karna randrena svanam bhava saroraham. The process of hearing and chanting enters the core of the heart. And in this way, one becomes a pure devotee. By continuing this process, one comes to the stage of transcendental love. And then he appreciates the transcendental name, form, qualities, pastimes of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. In other words, a pure devotee, by devotional service, is able to see the Supreme Personality of Godhead despite many material impediments, which are all various energies of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So, such a person, by hearing and chanting, this process of hearing and chanting enters the core of the heart. So we're hearing from the pure devotees. We're hearing from Bhagavatam. And when we're chanting, we're also hearing. We're hearing ourselves recite the holy name of the Lord. So we're hearing and chanting. This hearing and chanting process enters the core of the heart. And one becomes a pure devotee that way, by hearing and chanting. By continuing hearing and chanting, develops love, transcendental love. And then they can appreciate the name, the form, qualities, pastimes of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. A pure devotee, by devotional service, is able to see the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So, just recently, there was some discussion that, well, no one really knows what Krishna is wearing. He could be wearing anything. Who knows? Who's actually seen? Well, pure devotee has seen Krishna. If he's seen Krishna, he knows what Krishna is wearing. He knows what Krishna's paraphernalia is. He knows what Krishna's form is. He knows what his qualities are. It's not that nobody knows. Maybe you don't know. And since you've just admitted you don't know by saying, well, nobody really knows, then it's time to start hearing properly from someone who has seen Krishna and does know what Krishna is wearing. What Krishna looks like, what his activities are. Just because you don't know doesn't mean no one knows. That's why we hear from the realized souls. They do know, and they can impart knowledge into us because they've seen the truth. So we render service. There's different ways to serve the pure devotee, or facilitate his preaching efforts. That's there. But ultimately, to realize the Lord, to become pure devotees. And it begins with hearing and chanting. That can never be, not in Lord Chaitanya's Sankirtan, because that's the yagna for the age. Shravanam, Kirtanam, that's the yagna for the age, so not going to jump over that at any time. Might as well jump into it, not over it, around it. Might as well embrace it, take it on. Hear from the authorities submissively and chant. So, by devotional service, he's able to see the Supreme Personality of Godhead despite many material impediments, which are all various energies of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So that's when the impediments disappear. There can't be any impediments to devotional service. You're serving the Supreme Lord. He's the controller, owner, maintainer of everything. Beyond the three modes of material nature, engaging in such a person's service, where could there be any impediments? There aren't any. There are no impediments to devotional service. Srila Prabhupada is fond of saying that there are no impediments to devotional service. This next sentence, Prabhupada will explain how that is the case. Easily making his way through these impediments, Prabhupada knows about this, direct experience. Easily making his way through these impediments, a devotee comes directly in contact with the Supreme Personality of Godhead. After all, the material impediments described in these verses are but various energies of the Lord. These so-called impediments are simply the energies of the Lord. They're opportunities for service. I don't know how this relates very well or not, but I always like to think of this little saying that someone shared with me, that you always learn the most from your most difficult customer. That's people that are in sales, and they get a lot of no's, impediments. They say, well, you always learn the most from your most difficult customer. So these impediments are great teachers. Because if we're experiencing something as impediment, there's something we need to learn about Krishna that we're in ignorance of. Because these so-called impediments are nothing but Krishna's various energies. They're all lessons meant to help us become more Krishna conscious. That's what Prabhupada's saying here. The devotee easily maneuvers through these impediments. After all, the material impediments described in these verses are but various energies of the Lord. When a devotee is eager to see the Supreme Personality of Godhead, he prays to the Lord. Ainantananu jakin karam patitam mam vishame bhavam buddha, kripaya tava pada pankaja, stata duli sadarisam vichintaya. Translation. O son of Maharaj Nanda Krishna, I am your eternal servitor, yet somehow or other I've fallen into the ocean of birth and death. Please, pick me up from this ocean of death. Place me as one of the atoms at your lotus feet. End translation. And that is Lord Chaitanya, one of Lord Chaitanya's 8 prayers that he left, Shikshastika. Being pleased with the devotee, the Lord turns all his material impediments into spiritual service. Hare Krishna. Let me read that again. Being pleased with the devotee who is praying like that, I'm your eternal servitor, I've fallen into this material ocean. Please place me as one of the atoms at your lotus feet. Suffering here so much in this material world. I'm your servant, please. Engage me in your service. Now, being pleased with the devotee who prays like that, the Lord turns all his material impediments into spiritual service. The materialists, they just have impediments. That's it. There's one difficulty after another, and then ultimately death. But for the devotee, these so-called difficulties, it says here, Prabhupada says here, the Lord turns all these so-called difficulties into spiritual service. So the devotee is never separated from Krishna. No matter what the quote-unquote impediments are or difficulties are, they're simply opportunities for serving Krishna. How does that happen? The Lord himself turns these material impediments. The Lord turns the impediments into service. It's not something the devotee is imagining, foolishly imagining some difficulty or impediment, just closing his eyes and imagining. No. Krishna is actually changing these things into a field of activity on the spiritual plane. Which is different from the field of activity for the same so-called impediment on the material platform. Krishna raises the whole thing onto the spiritual platform, and then it becomes accepted as devotional service to Krishna. And it's ecstatic, whatever it is. Krishna does that. Because Krishna is attracted to devotional service. And he comes there. And so the whole thing transforms. Being pleased with the devotee, the Lord turns all his material impediments into spiritual service. It's like, maybe this is a way to think about that, the Griyamedi and the Grihasta. So the Griyamedi, he's living in a house, or they're living in a house, a couple is living in the house, and they're dealing with household affairs. And there are difficulties. Have to get money and repair the building and dealing with different people, working together, becoming satisfied and peaceful and happy, trying to enjoy the situation on the material platform. And ultimately, someone gets sick and dies, or they both become very old, or someone decides they don't want to stay there anymore and they leave, or something happens to the children, or they don't have enough income. Anyway, it goes on, the things that can happen trying to maintain a family, material platform. And everything is dealt with and is felt as an impediment, as a difficulty, as a frustration, brings anxiety. But then take the Grihasta family, that they've dedicated their home to Krishna, and they are engaging in chanting and glorifying Krishna as much as possible. They're offering all of their activities and services. They're conceiving children for Krishna. And so they may have some impediment how to get money. It becomes devotional service. Or someone is sick, how to help them and nurse them. It becomes devotional service. Actually, the hearing and chanting increases. How to raise the children, and then the hearing and chanting, everything increases. The more the demands increase, the more the devotional service increases. And the whole thing is on the spiritual platform, to whatever degree it can be done. You're making some endeavor, Krishna's pleased. Krishna's pleased, then he turns that material situation into spiritual service. So, yeah, having to eat is an impediment. It's a great disturbance having to eat all the time. It's expensive, and you have to get the ingredients. You have to disturb other living entities to eat someone. Eating a carrot or a potato, or the poor thing has to come out of the ground. It's very disturbing, and it's an impediment. Some of the really advanced devotees, they reduce their eating tremendously. Just a little bit of cow's milk in the morning, something like, or a little bit of yogurt or something. Not artificially, but eating is a big impediment. And the materialists, they're striving so hard to satisfy this eating, and then it's not just filling the body with food, it's also the tongue is always wanting new tastes and varieties. It's a kind of impediment. We have to work so hard to get food. Working, and then cooking it and preparing it and the whole thing. And then cleaning up afterwards. Oh my goodness. It's a lot of work, materially. But by engaging in devotional, desiring to surrender to Krishna, when the devotee has that attitude, please pick me up from this ocean of death, place me as one of the atoms at your lotus feet. And Krishna is pleased by that attitude and turns all of that cooking and all of that into devotional service. Okay, offer everything to me. Offer this kind of food, and offer it like this, and say these mantras and prayers like that, and do it like that. Then it's devotional service. It's not an impediment. It's an opportunity to engage the body, the tongue, the belly, the hands, the feet, everything in devotional service. So Krishna, being pleased, turns these so-called difficulties and impediments into devotional service. When the devotee has that attitude, please engage me. And that's what the Hare Krishna mantra is. Please engage me in your devotional service. Please pick me up and place me one of the atoms at your lotus feet. In this connection, Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur quotes a verse from Vishnu Purāṇa. Ladini Sandini Samvit Tvayeka Sarva Saristita Sanistita Sanstita. I'm sorry, I can't see it. It's blurred. Lada Tapa Karimisra Tvayino Guna Varjite. In the material world, the spiritual energy of the Supreme Personality of Godhead is manifested as Tapakari, which means causeless miseries, causing miseries. Okay, so we're going to get a little more insight into how this transformation takes place from impediments to devotional service. So this verse is very this sentence is very revealing, and this is from Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur, quotes the Vishnu Purāṇa in this regard. In the material world, the spiritual energy of the Supreme Personality of Godhead is manifested as tapakari, which means causing miseries. So this is the spiritual energy of the Lord. But in the material world, it manifests as causing miseries. Why? Because the conditioned souls are in competition with the Lord. And so they come into contact with his spiritual energies. They're competing with the Lord, which means they're in competition with his spiritual energies also. So they're seen as impediments to my enjoying. I want to enjoy. The Lord's spiritual energy is an impediment. His spiritual desires are an impediment. Because I'm trying to ignore him. But it's like an elephant in the room. You can't ignore him. He's there. Spiritual energies manifest in the material world means causing miseries. Continuing, everyone hankers for happiness, but although happiness originally comes from the pleasure potency of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, in the material world, because of material activities, which means material desires, the pleasure potency of the Lord becomes a source of miseries. Lada tapa kari, the Ladini Shakti, is actually a pleasure potency. But in conflict with those with material desires, it becomes an impediment. Like Krishna kidnapping Rukmini. Shishupal wanted to marry Rukmini, and Krishna was an impediment. And Kamsa, he wanted to take over ultimately, and Krishna was forewarned would be an impediment. So this is the demonic mentality. Krishna and his energies are impediments. They're impediments to what I want to do. But the energies of the Lord themselves are actually, Ladini is a pleasure potency. We're meant to enter into the pleasure potency of the Lord. Not to be in competition. My pleasure potency. So this we see when these pastimes, when the Krishna appeared as Krishna 5,000 years ago, the original personality of Godhead, Krishna, and he dealt with all these adversaries, those who were not, were seeing Krishna's Ladini as an impediment to themselves, couldn't enter in with that demonic mentality. What's amazing about Lord Chaitanya in that even though there are so many who see the Lord's pleasure potency as an impediment to their own, the Lord is benedicting everyone simply through his holy name. Prasadam, against their will, they're being entered into the pleasure potency of the Lord, even against their will. They're being liberated, they're being engaged. Inconceivable. Well, there's Jagai and Madhai. The Lord Nityananda and Lord Chaitanya immediately on the spot transform them into pure devotees right on the spot. So we can understand the mission of Lord Chaitanya with all these millions and millions and millions of Jagai and Madhais running around. The Lord is turning them into devotees on the spot. That's his mission. It's Kali Yuga. That's his mission. But here we're seeing the mechanics of it, how Prabhupada is helping us understand what's going on here. The pleasure potency of the Lord becomes a source of miseries. Lada tapa kari. False happiness in the material world is the source of distress. But when one's endeavors for happiness are redirected toward the satisfaction of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, this tapakari element of misery is vanquished. An example given in this connection is that extracting fire from wood is certainly difficult, but when the fire comes out, it burns the wood to ashes. In other words, experiencing the Supreme Personality of Godhead is extremely difficult for those devoid of devotional service. But everything becomes easier for a devotee, and thus he can very easily meet the Supreme Lord. Interesting. Extracting fire from wood is certainly difficult. We were just hearing in previous, in the verse, how the Brahmins are able to extract the fire from the wood by mantras. So this Lord Chaitanya Sankirtan is extracting the devotional service with this Maha Mantra, the great mantra for deliverance. Is extracting the essence, the devotional service, making it easier for the conditioned souls to enter into the blissful Ladini energy of the Lord, spiritual potencies of the Lord. It's the entrance in, is the hearing of the holy name of the Lord and the chanting. Inconceivable. Here the prayers say that the form of the Lord is beyond the jurisdiction of material form and is therefore inconceivable. A devotee prays, however, quote, "My dear Lord, be pleased with me, so I might very easily see your transcendental form and potency." End quote. Non-devotees try to understand the Supreme Brahman by discussions of neti-neti, which means not this, it's not that, it's not this, it's not that. Nisheda nirvana sukhanubhuti. A devotee, however, simply by chanting the holy name of the Lord, avoids such laborious speculations and realizes the existence of the Lord very easily.